Beatz Media presents the Scoop and Score Football Show.
Maybach music. Spencer Gallup, how are we doing today, sir?
What's up? I'm doing pretty good.
Doing all right, man. We got a lot to talk about today, man. We got more conference realignment. We got more college football quarterbacks we're going to discuss. And we're also going to fix our favorite NFL teams because we are better general managers than anyone else for our teams, obviously. You know, we're the greatest couch potato general managers of all time. Okay? That's who we are.
Sometimes the fans are right. Sometimes the fans are right with players.
They really get it right most of the
time. Sometimes
the
fans hype up players and they turn out to be pretty damn good. So,
and you know what else is the right thing for the people listening at home? They should subscribe to the channel. They should hit the push notification bell to stay up to date on all new videos. If you are watching us on YouTube, if you're listening on Spotify, make sure you follow us and also rate the podcast 5 stars if you think you're 5 stars. If you rate us 1 star, I'm not going to hate you. Okay, but at least, you know, let your feelings out. Let your feelings out. I don't care. You could also listen to us as well on Apple Podcasts. You should follow us on Instagram at Ball N Beatz Media, TikTok as well at Ball N Beatz Media, and as well on X at Ball N Beatz Media. I know I switched up from Twitter this time, but we have to address the elephant in the room to start this off. As you can see, both of us, I know you can only really, if you're watching, you can see Spencer's sleeve a little bit. You assume that's a Toledo shirt as he moves his camera down there. Beautiful shot that was. I have the Toledo pullover on. We have Maction realignment.
And they've messed with my beloved conference.
And what screams Mid-American Conference more than Sacramento, California? The Sacramento State Hornets finally get their jump up to the FBS level. Spencer, your thoughts?
I mean, at this day and age, college football, conferences just don't make sense anymore. This obviously doesn't make sense for this conference, but at the same time, if you look at the financial situation that Sacramento State is giving the conference, and makes a ton of sense for them. They are giving them $18 million to get into this conference, and the MAC has told them that they are not getting any shares of anything that the other schools are getting in Ohio, Indiana, and Michigan, in New York with Buffalo. They're not getting any shares of the revenue, and they are completely fine with that. Sacramento State said that. Sacramento State is going to be paying for teams to fly out to Sacramento, California, and play there. To me, it's kind of a weird situation because I don't hate the move. I knew it was going to come at some point because they added UMass. And while UMass isn't exciting. UMass was in the MAC4, and it's just like they bring nothing football-wise. They have a decent basketball program. And then the other sports, like, doesn't really matter a ton. Baseball's okay. Have a really great hockey program, but that's not the Mid-American Conference. I like the move for the MAC because I think that with conference expansion, this will get you in the game for other teams in the FCS. I think that the MAC is going to be a benchmark for teams in the FCS to come up in the next couple years. We saw that with North Dakota State moving to the Mountain West, but you know, the Mountain West is as much as I love the MAC, a more prestigious conference than the Mid-American Conference. And that's why North Dakota State, with all of its, you know, championships and all of that, they moved right up. And if they do well there, they could maybe move up to the Pac-12 or
they also
Big
probably
12
fit
or
that
something
conference
like that.
Anyway a little bit more, period, just based off geographics. But obviously that doesn't matter anymore, period, when it comes to collegiate athletics. So
no, geographics, really, none of that matters. That's why we have, you know, a team in California for the MAC. But for Sacramento State, it gives you exposure to the FBS level. It gets you a chance to really create something there. They don't have a ton of history, and they were decent last year. I think they went, I can't remember what their record was last year in the FCS. but they have a lot of funding. We looked it up the other night. Apparently, the SAC 12 is what gets all this money to Sacramento State. It's a bunch of businessmen and lawyers and all these people who are in finances just supporting this team. And obviously, Shaquille O'Neal's the general manager.
He is not paid for his role, I will say, but that doesn't mean he might not be, of course, giving or donating or whatnot.
He's definitely giving money.
He's definitely got to be giving money of some kind.
$8 million. I don't.
For sure.
Yeah. And that has definitely something to do with it. But it gets you exposure to the FBS level. They're going to have options of, they can't play in the MAC title game right away because of the rule that, transition from FCS to FBS. It's a 1-year transition period. Same goes for North Dakota State and the Mountain West. But it's going to be fun. I mean, I don't know. Why not, man? It's gotten to a point to where conferences don't really matter in terms of geography and all that stuff. I mean, you have Stanford in the ACC, the Atlantic Coast Conference. They're on the Pacific Coast.
Yep.
So I think it's I think it's cool for exposure for Sacramento State. I think it's cool for the MAC to kind of do something that they haven't done in a long time. Really kind of broaden their horizon. Like the last time was UCF, those years ago in Florida. In 2004. And this is something to expose these. Hey, I can't wait for Sacramento State to travel to Amherst, Massachusetts, go fly all the way across the country, possibly as far as you can get, and play at McGurk Memorial Stadium. It's going to be awesome.
I didn't want to address the other elephant in the room between them and Ball State. Well, we won't say the joke or whatnot. I think everyone kind of gets the gist there, but having them travel to Muncie, Indiana for that should be on primetime television. I'm sorry, it should. But genuinely, when it comes to this move, it makes a lot of sense for the Mid-American Conference to make this move. And honestly, with how desperate, and it's no shade throwing out there to Sacramento State, that's just what they are. They really want to be at the FBS level. This was the conference to do it. They are paying $23 million if you include the $5 million they owe the NCAA to jump up from the FCS to the FBS level in total to make this move. It is an unprecedented move. We've never seen anyone pay this much to move up, and let alone to the Mid-American Conference.
They get no benefits.
There's none. There is absolutely no benefit.
They're getting nothing from the MAC.
They're basically getting a scheduling agreement. That's what they're getting, is a scheduling agreement for their football program, so that way they can benefit their athletic programs for the future to more than likely eventually move off the Mid-American Conference after this contract is up. That's just being realistic here. I'm not saying, who knows, maybe they're here longer than that. I don't think they are, but it's a good move for both sides from a perspective of trying to get your product out there if you're Sacramento State, just to be on actual television. The MAC's deal when it comes to their television rights is probably the worst out of all conferences.
Yeah.
And the FBS level. So, but still, it gives you exposure. Now with the MAC, you just get a team who's going to pay each school, realistically, $1.5 million to make this jump. And, a lot of people are talking about conference realignment teams coming up. No one is talking about the schools that can no longer financially sustain themselves at this level. And the MAC is one of those conferences that has a couple of those schools that realistically in the future might have to make that hard decision to drop down. Again.
Kent State,
Akron, maybe an Eastern Michigan, maybe a Buffalo possibly as well. Like, just throwing those out. I'm not saying that those are the schools that will, but I think those are pretty realistic options if that were to happen.
You can't rely on basketball.
And so I think the MAC is just trying to get ahead of themselves a little bit, potentially, with how the future is. I think this is a much bigger topic of discussion with what you said, that this is almost like a feeder system for the FCS. The MAC might become that kind of conference. You already see with Conference USA. Conference USA and the MAC are maybe now kind of on that same tier.
The lowest of the group of five is the MAC and the Conference USA. That's why you saw seeing Missouri State and Delaware and those teams make that jump into Conference USA.
Yeah, because these conferences, one, need to stay afloat, and two, you have teams that believe they should be at the highest tier of football. So those schools are going to try and make those jumps to compete and stay afloat in the society that we live in now.
Yeah.
So I think it makes sense for both sides. Really, for long term, for the MAC, it kind of shows they also might be preparing for some potential exits as well. I don't want to throw it out there, but we've all kind of talked about it for years, being Toledo alums, that potentially in the future it's more than likely going to be the case. Toledo, Ohio, Miami of Ohio, those three schools in particular, I kind of circle, might potentially leave the Mid-American Conference. And we are MAC guys at heart. We love the MAC. We've grown up in it. But it's also
It
just...
would be for the American, if
it
I
would
had
be
to guess.
realistic. It's a realistic thing to discuss because Toledo had the same offer as Northern Illinois at the Mountain West. They did not go. And IU
Yeah.
did. And now they're also playing in the Horizon League for their other sports too. So
That would have been something.
And another thing we need to discuss, conferences when it comes to all sports might completely erode entirely because individual sports make more money. Like these football only deals, it makes more sense logistically even to have these football only conferences like Sac State coming into the MAC, but they can probably still play all the other schools that are closer to them geographically, don't need to spend as much money because let's be honest here, football and men's basketball in particular at most universities are the only ones every single year that end in the green.
Yep.
Everything else is
And
probably
even then,
in the
men's
red.
basketball, unless you're like Duke or Michigan or like these like upper echelon teams, it's football.
Yeah. It's true.
And I mean, even at Michigan, it's definitely football. But Duke, even though Duke won the ACC, Duke is a prestigious basketball program that brings in so much money. But like, you have to commit so much money to that and football. But
Right.
it's mainly football. If you don't have a good football program and your basketball team is just is okay, you're not going to bring in a lot of money. And with that being kind of the case for Kent State, in the MAC, we talked about them leaving, or being one of those potential leaving. They've lost. They have the most losses in the FBS history. And the team that was above them just won the national championship.
Yeah.
So they have a lot of catching up to do. And with their basketball team being okay, Kent State normally has a solid men's basketball team. Their baseball team is very good, but nobody
Soccer
cares
as well.
about
Soccer's probably what they're best at historically.
yeah.
That's Akron actually. I got the two mixed up there. Akron soccer, top tier by the way.
But like those are no revenue sports,
No.
unfortunately. And like I love college baseball. That's a no revenue sport unless you get to Omaha. But even then, like, or the super regionals, like you're making money, but then again, you got to win your conference. You got to make the postseason. Kent State, I wouldn't be surprised in the next like 4 years if they drop down to the FCS because it's their best year. I mean, in the last like couple decades might be the couple years ago when they won their bowl game and made the MAC title game in like 21, I think, against NIU and lost.
Yeah.
I don't remember what the records were when they had Julian Edelman at quarterback.
Julian Edelman at quarterback. They had Josh Cribbs returning kicks and being a receiver for them. I will say this about Kent State. I mean, this is way too far down the road. I actually think Kent State's a pretty sneaky team for next year in the MAC, which we will eventually down the road talk about a little bit further. But they have been historically the worst football team in college football, specifically in the MAC. I mean, now you have UMass, that kind of changes it a little bit, maybe. But Kent State has not had a lot of success. They've had a lot of names come through that program. From a historical perspective, though, they have a footprint in college football. I mean, Nick Saban graduated from Kent State. Let's be honest here. If he wanted to, he could probably fund that school on his own.
Yeah.
But it's a very realistic situation that we're looking at the MAC, even some schools possibly even in the American, Mountain West, like down the road, some of these schools will just not be able to compete at this level anymore because they just financially can't. And they will have to drop down. You saw it in college basketball. We're pivoting a little bit away from football with this discussion, but it's a massive deal across all sports. You saw St. Francis of PA. They had to leave the Northeast Conference after this year, and they're dropping all the way to D3.
Yep.
For the rest of their sports.
It's not the funding. They don't have the funding.
From FBS basketball to D3 is kind of insane. You don't see that kind of drop.
Well, you got to make so much money to stay in the FBS.
You do, exactly.
That's the problem. Like, you have to be able to make a certain amount of money, and that's what these teams have issues with, is that their fan bases either don't care or they don't have the team for them to care about.
Or they don't even have the alumni base too, or the donors or anything
or
like
the
that.
Funding, it's like, and even then, like St. Francis of PA, that you're at most, if you win your conference, you're going to be a 16 seed, and you're going to get drubbed by, the Purdues, the Michigans, the Villanovas, the UConns of the world. You're just going to get killed, unless you have this like 1 in a million, UMBC or
Fairleigh Dickinson.
Win. But then again, they lost in the round of 32, both of them. But then again, I don't think they would care about that.
Right.
It's just about money, and if you don't have a football program, that also doesn't help either. If you're just strictly basketball, for those programs that don't have a football program, it's going to be tough to get money in that way, because then men's and women's basketball is your main funding, and it's not like a big revenue generator like football is.
Right. It doesn't bring in, millions of dollars for your school a year.
No.
At all. I mean, yeah, like you said, unless you're like an upper echelon basketball program like the Dukes, the Kentuckys, the Kansas, even North Carolinas of the world, you're not bringing in all that dough. So, you got to find another way, or you just got to be realistic. And that's where a lot of these schools are just going to have to turn, man. But for Sacramento State, Sacramento, California, in the Mid-American Conference, I like it as well from the perspective of having just a presence on the West Coast.
Yeah.
I was having this conversation off air with people. I kind of like it because you get kids who could go out west, or kids who are out west, or kids who are from here. They go out there, they play, and they could still be seen at home by their family and whatnot. From that perspective, it's still kind of cool and everything, but it's not the same impact as it would be for like USC or Oregon or, for the Big Ten. But it's still on that smaller scale, still pretty good for the MAC to be in the biggest state economically. You now have another recruiting bed to kind of dig into a little bit deeper if you really want to.
You have a footprint on the West Coast, which is important.
So I think it's a good move for now, and it's, who cares about geography anymore? That's been long gone. I feel like we have to say it every week on this show that it doesn't matter anymore. That's just where we are. But Sacramento State, the Hornets, Mid-American Conference football program. Never thought I would say something like that, but that's where we are. That is where we are. This is episode 23 of the Scoop and Score Football Show. We thank you guys for tuning in.
The LeBron episode.
Nice little break. So that way you guys can go subscribe to the YouTube channel again. Or you can follow us on Spotify. You can follow us on Apple Podcasts. You can follow us on our social media pages as well. At Ball N Beatz Media on Instagram, TikTok, and X. Let's pivot to college football quarterbacks again. Last week we talked about our top 10 quarterbacks going into the 2026 college football season. I kind of wanted to cover a little bit more because this year in particular, there is a lot of experience at the quarterback position, probably more than we've ever really seen. And I think there's almost a whole entire tier 2 of quarterbacks. There's also some guys I just think you guys cannot forget for this season. Don't forget about certain players, okay? This quarterback class is so deep. It is so deep. And for me, I'm going
to Trinidad Chambliss, by the way.
I know.
He'll be back.
He will be back. I forgot about that even, like making this list. because he wasn't even considered in our top 10 at the time because it was still kind of up in the air. And he was the biggest wrench in everything, I think, when it came to
He
college
would
football
definitely be
conversations.
he's definitely in there now that he's back.
Yes, exactly. We might need to do an
Probably
updated
top 5.
might need to do an updated top 10 list eventually when we get the chance. But I'll start here with my top of my like tier 2 guys. Lenora Sellers has to be, right?
Yep.
I think Lenora Sellers got a lot of hate. I mean, he was banged up last year for South Carolina. They had all the hype coming into the season and just didn't work out. They went 3-9. Nick Harbor wasn't great. Offense wasn't great.
South Carolina was a mess last year.
They were a mess, but I have a feeling he's going to perform really well, and I think South Carolina might perform pretty well now that all the hype is kind of dissipated from them, and they've returned everybody that you were scared you would lose after last season because they would have played too good. Like Nick Harbor, like Dylan Stewart, like Lenora Sellers. I think Lenora Sellers is still up there in tier 2. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I agree. He I mean, he was like people were thinking he was going to get drafted this upcoming draft.
They thought he might have been the number one
guy. They
guy.
had a lot of hype on him, and well, he didn't have a bad year. South Carolina in itself, they just imploded on themselves, and a lot has to do with their head coach and Beamer. But they, I think it's the same thing that we saw with Arch Manning. Arch Manning has a much better system around him, but Arch Manning didn't. I mean, he had a good year last year if you look at his stats. But if you watched him play in some of the games that I watched him, he looked a little unsteady. He looked very yippy. He looked like a freshman. He looked like he was young. And now you're getting another year of experience. And this year with Arch Manning, there's a ton of hype around him, and I'm buying into it now. And I think the same for Lenora Sellers. He's one of those guys that we all thought that he was going to be this stud, and I still think he is. But in that South Carolina was going to take a leap, one of those dark horses to make the playoffs, and it just never came to fruition. But I mean, they almost beat Alabama last year. They probably should have beat Alabama to really jumpstart their season. But I do think Lenora Sellers will be better. One of my guys that I think is going to be really good, and I am surprised that he is still staying at this school because I do think loyalty still means a little bit. And he was a freshman last year, and I'm not going to say his name because I don't know how to say it. But
I'll say
California's
it for you.
guy.
I'll say it for you because he's actually one of my main guys on this. Jaron Kiave Sagapulatele.
JKS. I'm just going to call him JKS. JKS was the freshman leader, and he was elite at California last year. He came out of the scene. He was a 5-star quarterback. He chose California over Oregon. It was a massive win, and now they have Oregon's old coordinator coming back to coach.
You forgot he was at Oregon for a week.
Yeah,
he chose Cal, then Oregon. It doesn't count that he went back to Cal. But yes, they do have Tosh Lapoy, the defensive coordinator from Oregon, coming down there to coach them. I'm glad you mentioned him because he was going to be the next guy I was going to say anyway. I'm really high on him. That reflected in my preseason rankings, man. If
they were scoring a lot of points last year.
Their defense was giving up a lot of points too. That was their problem.
And now, hey, you got Tosh Lapoy to help you out. So
absolutely. The next guy for me, I'm gonna go with CJ Bailey from NC State. CJ Bailey, if he was wearing any other school logo on his helmet, would probably be considered a top 5 or top 10 quarterback in college football. He just so happens to be in Raleigh, North Carolina, and not in Miami Gardens, Florida, Coral Gables, Florida. So, and the rumor out there was he was the quarterback that Miami really wanted in the transfer portal, and he chose to stay at NC State with Dave Doran. So, I think CJ Bailey, if they can refine that offense a little bit, I think North Carolina State, with him at quarterback, could be one of those sneaky ACC teams to watch towards the top this year. I fully believe in it.
Yeah, he had 25 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. I was just looking at his stats. He was 12th in QBR.
Yeah.
He had himself a really good year last year. I do think that with NC State, I know it means a little more to you because it's a little close to home.
Yes.
Because you have family in NC State and all that. But I do like this. I think NC State is one of those teams. They normally have a good team every other year, or every couple years they have a team that goes 9-3 or gets to almost to 10 wins, and maybe that's this year. They got to do it at some point.
Right.
So yeah. My next guy that I think is going to have a really good year is Pitt's quarterback, Mason
Heinschel.
Heinschel, yeah.
Mason Heinschel, Oregon Clay legend.
Yeah, he had himself a decent year last year. And with Pitt, they had a really good offense. They didn't play well against Miami. They got obliterated by Miami and Notre Dame. But they got game day to Pitt, so that's kind of cool. But he really fit that offense well. And I do think that with another year under his belt, he'll take that next step because his emergence last year, people didn't know a whole lot about him. And now you're starting to get a little more buzz about him.
Right. I think the thing about Pittsburgh that I have a little bit of question is the rest of their roster a little bit more than anything else. They lost a lot of talent, but I trust what we saw on tape out of Mason Heinschel this season when he was out there. I mean, their offense was completely different between Eli Holstein, who's now at Virginia with Bo Pribula, and Tony Elliott. Again, third time he's transferred. When Mason Heinschel came in, they were just better. They were a lot better, and we'll see what he does next year. I'm actually going to group these three guys all together that I have because I think some people might forget that they still play college football next year. So I'm going to put these all in the same category. And I kind of tweeted these names out earlier on Twitter if people didn't see. Kevin Jennings at SMU, Noah Fafita at Arizona, and Connor Wegman at Houston. Yes, Connor Wegman is still in college football. All three of those guys are in very similar spots where SMU, they made the playoff in year one of the 12-team format. Was still good, wasn't great like it was the previous season. Who knows? Maybe SMU is still pretty good this year. You have Noah Fafita in Arizona, who I talked about a lot, saying they were one of the quietest 9-3 teams in the country. And same with Houston.
At the end of the year. Yeah.
And same with Houston. Like both those programs in Arizona and Houston finished the year ranked. And like everyone's like, okay, yeah, cool, they're ranked. Like there's no one talked about it. No one talked about the job that Willie Fritz did in Houston and then Arizona with Brett Brennan. Like those two guys did two of the best jobs last year, and it's partially because of the experience at quarterback that really helped those teams. And don't forget about those guys actually still playing college football this year, and they're easily still tier 2 guys. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think people expect all three of those teams with Houston, SMU, and Arizona to be pretty solid next year. I mean, Arizona went 9-3. SMU had a really good season, and you think Houston's going to have a pretty good year.
I do.
So
I really do.
You had them ranked in your top 20. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of hype with these guys. They're all seasoned vets. They've been in the game for a while. Noah Fafita is one of those guys that I always forget about, and then I realize he's been really good at Arizona, almost his entire career, and he's been there. This will be his 5th year at Arizona, and loyalty is still means something to some players. He could have left when Jed Fish, went to Washington, but he decided to stay at Arizona. And he's making a name for himself out there. And I do think he's one of those guys that if he has a really good year, he can get drafted next year. This is a massive quarterback class next year. And I know we say that every year, but the amount of quarterbacks that are getting drafted next year, talent-wise, is insane. It's everywhere. You're going to have teams just say, you know what, this is a gap year next year, like the Miami Dolphins and the New York Jets, who are just going to say, you know what, forget it. We're going to be really bad next year. Maybe we'll sign Malik Willis to a 1-year deal, and maybe he can be a bridge guy. And then next year, we're just going to go draft a quarterback.
I don't know about Malik Willis. Someone's going to drop a bag on him. Someone's going to drop a nice 35 M's on Malik Willis.
Yeah, I don't think.
And maybe a 2-year contract.
Is he really worth all that?
He could be.
He's made some plays, but
maybe he's the next Sam Darnold, man.
So small.
Maybe he's the next Sam Darnold. Who knows? There's going to be a team willing to risk it. There will be. You already know it. I mean, that's how the NFL is.
6 touchdowns in 4 years. So
that's 1.5 every season? That's pretty good.
That's pretty good for Jet standards.
That's pretty
so
good,
I
I
don't know, man.
think.
He's good, and I just think he's more of a bridge quarterback in my opinion. But maybe a team is dumb enough to give him a 3-year deal and see what happens. But even then, again, if he's bad and that contract looks bad, you're going to be drafting a quarterback anyway. So
Absolutely. Got a couple more here for you. I don't know how many more you have. But one that I think had a lot of hype, didn't necessarily live up to it this season. You kind of find out, okay, maybe there's real reasons why it didn't necessarily pan out year one. But the talent is there, and he might actually get developed this season with this coaching staff. Bryce Underwood still, I think, is going to be a tier 2 guy. He has all the tools. He has all the mechanics. I think he's very good. He just needs a quarterback coach, and he finally has.
He needed a quarterback coach, which is insane that he didn't have one.
Michigan, like
that is absolutely insane.
What was really going on at Michigan, dude? Like, what was really happening down there, up in Ann Arbor? I just don't understand. I don't understand half the things, man. But Bryce Underwood, he's going to be better this season. Absolutely, stamp that home. If he isn't, then something's really, really wrong with Bryce Underwood, and something's really wrong with Michigan. But I would assume Kyle Whittingham knows what he's doing. So I would be very smart to assume he's going to be better, even though you shouldn't always assume because it makes an ass out of you and me, but it doesn't matter. I would rather assume that. And another guy who, well, actually my last 3 all have pretty good experience. But one that is more kind of personal, and I think he might just be the most exciting quarterback to watch. It doesn't mean he's the best. It doesn't mean he's great, but he's so fun to watch when he's actually healthy. John Mateer is a great college football quarterback. I don't care what people say. It wasn't always pretty last season. He threw a lot of picks. He got banged up, and he was never the same last season. But he is so fun. Like, he reminds me of Baker Mayfield. That's probably why he's so fun, because he has a little bit of that Baker edge to him, and he is the epitome of an Oklahoma quarterback.
Yeah. I mean, people were talking about him winning the Heisman at early points in the season.
He was
and
the
then
favorite.
injuries just derailed his season, and Oklahoma still got by and made the playoffs. And yeah, I totally think that he's going to be up there again if he can be fully healthy. He's a dual threat quarterback. He can run with the ball, and yeah, he is kind of like Baker Mayfield. He plays like it, and it makes sense he's at Oklahoma because of all the history of Oklahoma quarterbacks. Yeah, I do have a couple. I don't know if you were done or if you still had another one.
I have 2 more still left in the tank if you want to go and rattle off some more of yours.
Okay. A guy who had a really good year last year, and he started late in the season because this team just needed to find a quarterback. He was a true freshman last year, and he's going to be their starter this year. And I do think that even though this team has a lot going against it, they have a brand new head coach, a brand new head start, and this guy's staying there. Alessio Miliojevic from Michigan State.
I like that pull.
He really had a solid year last year. He had 10 touchdowns. He had 3 picks. You saw him go into games. They were scoring points. I mean, Michigan State had a lot of issues last year with their entire situation and head coach and stuff like that. And I do think with a brand new fresh start, I think that Miliojevic can really cement himself as Michigan State's starter for the next couple years, because he's going to be a sophomore this year.
Yep.
And then obviously he has his next year's junior year, depending on the transfer portal. But he's a guy that I would watch out for, because I do think Michigan State will be better this year under Pat Fitzgerald. How much better? We'll see, just because they have a tough schedule and they still have a lot of holes to fill. But I do believe in Pat Fitzgerald and program building. So
something he's always been pretty good at, for sure.
Yeah. And another guy, it was the guy who replaced him. I still do think Aiden Childs can be something. He's at Northwestern now. And with their brand new revamp of a coaching staff, I don't what he's not like a tier 2 guy, but he's a guy that I would watch out for to maybe take a step. It's his last year
He's a
at
don't
Northwestern.
forget. He's a
He's
don't
a don't
forget guy.
forget guy because I do think he still can be something because I've seen flashes of Aiden Giles, and I mean he still had a pretty good year last year. He had 10 touchdowns and 3 picks, just like Miljojevic. But his problem was, at least in the past, his interceptions problem. He threw a lot of picks, and he worked on that last year. And then Michigan State named Miljojevic their starter, and Aiden Giles went to Northwestern. And while Northwestern does have a tough schedule next year, I do think Childs can be something. I just need to see it. And I think with that brand new coaching staff, you get a brand new head start. You get Jerry Neuheisel to be your quarterbacks coach, I believe. Just brand new start. It's your last year. Let's see what happens. I think he can be solid at Northwestern.
And I think Northwestern, honestly, if you really look at last year, there was a realistic chance they went 9-3. They had a lot of close games.
Yeah, they
Nothing sticks
did.
out more than that Michigan game that they should have beat. They should have beat
Yep.
Michigan at Wrigley. If their schedule wasn't so brutal this season, I would probably circle Northwestern as one of those teams to maybe be a sneaky like 9-3 or better team. But their schedule's so tough that it's if they have the same record or even slightly worse, even if they are 6-6 and barely make a bowl game, it's still probably okay because I still think this team next year will probably be better for Northwestern. That's just
Yeah.
at least what it gives right now. Two more of my tier 2 guys. Marcel Reed at Texas A&M. And the thing is, I'm not as high on Marcel Reed as others are. I'm not as high as on Texas A&M as a program as others are, simply because of their schedule last year. When they played their tough opponents, they lost. They're kind of like what Ohio State ended up being.
Yeah.
They play their toughest games, they did end up losing. And so I kind of have a little bit more questions for the Aggies coming into this season. I still think Marcel Reed is a very talented guy. I think his pass game needs to get a little bit better, but just his overall athleticism, he's a very fun quarterback to watch. I just can't ignore that. And I'm also going to give a nod to the experience and the guy that is following his coach to Happy Valley in Rocco Becht. I've had to really rethink Penn State a little bit since we did our way too early rankings. And I feel like whenever we have our next way too early rankings, I think Penn State might be in the top 20 based off that schedule, based off that roster, and based off the experience of the roster. I like Rocco Becht a lot, and experience matters in college football, period. It does. And that's where we're at. And Rocco Becht is just as experienced as the rest. And he's still a very solid quarterback.
Yeah, I agree, and I do think that Penn State will have. I mean, their schedule, they avoided some teams. If you look at it,
Avoided a good amount.
yeah, they avoided a lot of teams. I wouldn't be surprised if they made the playoffs year one just by their schedule alone. But I do think with the lab being the last year of Becht, with his transfer from Iowa State, I think they'll be solid next year. I think Matt Campbell will bring a foundation. Do I think it'll be much better than James Franklin? Not really, but they'll be good, so that's all that matters. And I'll give one more. Because I was gonna say Becht. I'll actually say two. I would watch out for Ethan Grunkenmeyer at Virginia Tech because him under Franklin's system. Grunkenmeyer showed flashes last year. He's not a tier 2 guy, but he's a guy I would watch out for. I think Virginia Tech can be solid with all the recruits and transfers that James Franklin brought in year one. The ACC is a lot easier than the Big Ten. And let's bring Enter Sandman back. Let's get the hype back.
Yes, please.
Another guy who had a lot of news about him this offseason. And it's going to be hard to win that locker room back, in my opinion. But
I already know who you're going to say because he's on my don't forget. I already know who it is.
Yeah, Damon Williams is still a damn good quarterback. When he's playing. Think it might be a little hard to get your locker room back because of you kind of throwing him under the bus and then saying, you know what, I was joking. We're kidding. Yeah, I'm coming back.
Yes. With everything involved in that program, it's made it so much harder to try and really predict Washington next season because if none of that happened, I think Washington would be one of those dark horse playoff teams that you could realistically see if Damon Williams plays at his highest potential. He's the first guy I wanted to say on my do not forget these guys list because of the whole situation going on up there in Seattle. If he still plays very good, he wins over that locker room, then that's a moot point. Damon Williams is a tier 2 quarterback, borderline tier 1. Actually, he probably is tier 1.
He's
I would
one of the
make that
best
argument.
quarterbacks in the Big Ten. If last year he was very, very good. That Washington offense was good.
Of course, they're losing Jonah Coleman to the draft. They will bring Adam Muhammad at running back to replace him. There's still other pieces. You're losing Denzel Boston at wide receiver, but Washington, it seems like every couple years right now, has a good wide receiver, so I feel like it's almost a moot point there. Yeah, Damon Williams is absolutely, all just depends on the situation. Don't forget about him. Don't forget about him. Another guy with experience. Don't forget Avery Johnson's still playing college football at Kansas State. And now I know Kansas State. What happened last year? You had Farmageddon in week 0, and then your season completely derailed. Just whoever you are, don't lose in Ireland, okay? Do not lose in Ireland. There's a guy on this list I have already that I need to talk about later.
Next year?
It's TCU in North Carolina. A guy who's playing in that game is on my don't forget these guys list. We'll have
Bill
to see.
Belichick's going to lose, and then he's going to get fired because of how bad of a season he's going to have.
But Avery Johnson has Colin Klein now as his head coach. Colin Klein, the former Kansas State quarterback, and he was the Texas A&M offensive coordinator the last couple seasons. I expect Avery Johnson to be maybe at his best next year at Kansas State. And I think people might be kind of forgetting about Kansas State in the Big 12. Of course, there's Texas Tech now. You have other programs. I mean, Arizona State with Kenny Dillingham. You have, obviously, Houston as a legit possibility. Of course, Utah. We'll see how the program is this season without Kyle Whittingham. They still have Devon Dampier and everything. But Avery Johnson, he's still there. He's still kicking, man. Don't forget, he's still in college football. I could have included him on some of those other lists. Just don't forget this guy's playing college football still.
Yeah, he was really. He didn't have a great year. Well, I don't know. I've kind of given up on Avery Johnson and Kansas State, but I do think with the coaching staff brought in, a coaching staff can do a lot for a player, especially to regain confidence.
Right.
And he stayed at Kansas State all his career, and obviously he took over for Will Howard, and Will Howard went to OSU, and I did they make the right decision? Who knows? But I do think that with Avery Johnson, you get another year. Texas A&M had a good offense last year. You get a brand new coach to kind of revamp things.
Yes.
I can see why not. Maybe he has a resurrection year. He had a lot of issues reading defenses, but I don't know. A coach can do a lot for a player, so we'll see.
Absolutely. I have 8 more names, just so you know. Don't forget these other 8 names, too. One name we were both, I think, fairly high on going into the year. Situation kind of played out. He was injured, banged up. He had another guy come in and take over and absolutely balled out. So this kid has transferred. Don't forget about Austin Simmons at Missouri. He was the Ole Miss guy to begin the year, and Trinidad Chambliss had to come in from his injury, and he balled out, and then he took over his spot. Austin Simmons is such a unique person, even off the field. This kid is like 18, 19 as a junior, and he's already graduated college. It's like such a weird situation with him because he's so smart. But he's a very good football player too. And now that he is with Eli Drinkwitz up there at Missouri, I mean, why not? I like what Eli Drinkwitz has been able to do with quarterbacks. It isn't always elite, but it's still very good. Don't forget about Austin Simmons. Please don't.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, he was never given like the right opportunity at Ole Miss because they kind of swapped him and Trinidad Chambliss in and out, and then they just gave it to Chambliss. So Missouri is one of those teams. Like Bo Prabula, I think for a little while was having like a really good year, and then injuries derailed him, and then Missouri just wasn't the same after that. So yeah, why not?
Another one. I have a lot of transfers here, but I'm going to stick with one guy who is still at his program right now. Minnesota, Drake Lindsey. Hear me out about Drake Lindsey. And hear me out about Minnesota. I think Minnesota is one of those programs that the way they're built right now, it's almost built to actually legitimately compete. And I think Drake Lindsey is the kind of quarterback that could randomly make Minnesota compete. I'm not throwing it out there that Minnesota is going to be one of the best teams in the Big Ten, let alone, like, who knows, 8-4 even? They could be. I think Drake Lindsey has a lot
I'd
of
have to look at
talent.
their schedule,
He might be one
but
of their best quarterbacks they've had, period, as a program. I like him a lot. I know what people have to say about PJ Fleck. Some people like him, some people hate him. I kind of love his mindset, his mentality that he brings to coaching. Drake Lindsey is a guy to not forget about when you look randomly in Minnesota is somehow 6-0 to start the year or 5-0
he's
to start the year.
he's probably their best quarterback they've had since Tanner Morgan. So, and Tanner Morgan and that Minnesota team, I mean, they got up to
Get up to like
weren't they? Didn't they like
14th,
the top?
13th. They were up there.
No, because I remember they beat
Penn State.
number 4 Penn State,
Yeah.
and they were ranked 2, and they just kept jumping
They
up.
might have been up in like 8 or 7 at one point.
Yeah, I thought they were in the top 10, but yeah, I'd have to look at Minnesota's schedule to be honest, because like these like lower echelon tier Big Ten teams, like if they're playing OSU and Oregon and USC,
right, then it makes it a
like
little different.
Then they got no shot. But like if they have an easy schedule like Penn State, then I couldn't see why not. But I do think Drake Lindsey showed promise last year. I think the Big Ten's in a really good spot with quarterbacks.
It is
all around. And I do think that Minnesota, they kept him going, and he only threw 6 interceptions last year. So he showed prowess. So we'll see. Minnesota, with the rest of their roster, we'll find out more about that. But yeah, he's probably their best quarterback since Tanner Morgan. So
the thing about Drake Lindsey I like is I'm pretty certain he was a freshman or a sophomore this year. So he has that experience now at starter, and I just expect him to continue to get better and better up there. So maybe just the quality of Minnesota might raise up a little bit as well.
yeah.
So who knows? I think Minnesota's a sneaky Big Ten team to possibly watch this year. The rest of my guys are all transfer guys. All of them. I'm going to start by a guy who was just in the playoff with, of course, your favorite playoff teams at G5 school. James Madison transfer, Alonzo Barnett III. He's going to Central Florida. Alonzo Barnett III was very good at James Madison. Central Florida, ever since they've gone to the Big 12, it's been kind of stale. Hasn't been great.
Yeah, they haven't been the same.
I think with his experience coming there, of course, I mean, they've had other guys. They've had KJ Jefferson from Arkansas transfer in. He was a very talented quarterback. It didn't work out. They kind of stockpile quarterbacks like that a little bit, which kind of scares me about Central Florida. I think he might be maybe the most talented guy they've had at starter since they've joined the Big 12, possibly. We'll have to see how it goes. I think don't forget about the name, is all I'm saying. If you look at the Big 12 randomly and you see UCF maybe outperforming your expectations going into the season, that could be why.
He led the team to the playoffs, so Alonzo Barnett did. So
another transfer, and probably one of my favorites. I mean, this is the guy that had a 7-0 lead over Indiana in the first 10, 12 seconds of their season. At Old Dominion, Colton Joseph to Wisconsin. Wisconsin is going to run the ball. That's what I've figured out. Because Colton Joseph, as a quarterback, ran over 1,000 yards at Old Dominion. And he still passed for like 2,500 yards. He's not the best passer, but he's a very, very good running quarterback. He's a good dual threat guy. And if Wisconsin, Luke Fickell kind of changed up that whole offensive system up there to being more of an air raid offense. I think getting a guy like Colton Joseph maybe kind of is a telltale sign of, okay, maybe we go back a little bit to this running game, what Wisconsin's always been.
They were good.
Exactly.
In the early 2010s and all that with Monte Ball and all those guys. They ran the ball well, and with Colton Joseph, yeah, he ran the ball a ton. And I don't think you need to have a high-flying offense at Wisconsin to win. I think you just need to have a good running game, and they will have that with Joseph. So it's also a really big year for Luke Fickell.
It's massive.
He has to get this right. So I think it was big to get a quarterback that is very dual threat.
3 more names. I'm going to try and go a little bit quick fire with them. One, I'm going to go with Caden Hauser, the Illinois quarterback for next season, transferred in from East Carolina, replacing Luke Altmaier.
Michigan State.
Illinois is actually in a pretty good spot as a program right now. They haven't been in a spot like this in, honestly, probably almost 2 decades, when they had Juice Williams and company back in the 2006, 2007, 08 timeframe. As a program, they're in a pretty good spot. Brett Bielema is doing a very good job there. He's recruiting the best that we've seen Illinois in a long time, and bringing in a guy like Caden Hauser, who has experience. He did pretty good at East Carolina. He could pick up right where Luke Altmaier left off, and don't be shocked if Illinois is still pretty decent.
Yeah, no, I do think that Caden Hauser showed promise, and I do think, and when he went to Michigan State, then to East Carolina, he's a good passer. That's the one thing he's got going for him.
Yes.
And Illinois, with Luke Altmaier, he was a passer, but he was also a runner. So I think that's going to be different to see how Hauser attempts at that as well.
For sure. Next one, second to last. I'm going with Kenny Minchey at Kentucky. I don't think people are necessarily forgetting Kenny Minchey because of his whole situation where he committed to Nebraska and then switched to Kentucky. Him being the guy that almost started for CJ Carr. But I'm saying don't forget him because I kind of am sipping on the Kentucky Kool-Aid, if you will, with Will Stein and them, because I believe that Kentucky could take a serious jump. I'm not saying playoffs or nothing like that. I think Kentucky is going to at least be really competitive in the SEC, and it's going to throw some people off in year one. I expect them to be much better, and I think it's partially due to Kenny Minchey. I think he's a very talented quarterback.
It's Kentucky. They're in the. I gotta see it.
It's true. It's true. I understand, but we just saw Indiana win a national championship.
No, I gotta see it. I gotta see it. I do think that Will Stein will do a good job there. I just have to see year one how it adapts, because Kentucky, it's still the SEC.
That's why you don't forget when I warned you right now.
When Kentucky wins the national championship.
Middle of February. In the middle, borderline end of February, year of our Lord 2026, about Kenny Minchey and the Kentucky Wildcats. My last guy is a guy I already kind of mentioned that he plays in North Carolina next season. Not plays in North Carolina, plays in Ireland against North Carolina. Jaden Craig. Harvard transfer to TCU. Replacing your favorite Josh Hoover down there in Fort Worth. He balled out at the Ivy League. I think he can ball out in the Big 12 too. And it'll be intriguing to watch because he's one of those guys. We've talked about some other guys, not necessarily on air here, off record. He didn't necessarily get talked about a lot coming into, transfer portal window. Some people kind of mentioned it a little bit. I think he's one, when you look back, that TCU got a legit guy. They got a legit quarterback. And I think Jaden Craig is going to be one of those, when you circle back, you're like, why didn't we talk about this guy more? That's what I think about Jaden Craig.
TCU seems to always have like a passer quarterback, a guy that can always like throw the ball deep and, a gunslinger. So I wouldn't be surprised.
It wouldn't be shocking at all. TCU is always fun. And honestly, what they need to do is fix those uniforms. If they fix those uniforms, I think people would talk about TCU a little bit more again. I think they would. I need to take a sip of this unmarked B&B water here.
Unmarked.
Might be the longest I've gone on the show without taking a sip of the B&B water. It's pretty good. Let's pivot to the NFL. All right. Free agency is coming. And you and I, both being fans of the 2 best franchises of all time in the NFL, we are the general managers today. That's what we are. We are the general managers of our favorite team. We're going to start doing this as well, probably on our social media pages as well, on TikTok, Instagram, and whatnot. How to fix NFL franchises. And we're going to start, of course, on this episode with our favorite teams. And we'll do everyone else, I think, on social media for the most part. But, Spencer, General Manager Gallup, how do you fix the Detroit Lions?
It's perfect. No, I'm just playing. Well, first off, I got to know if Taylor Decker is going to retire. If he retires, then I got to go into free agency or into the draft and draft a tackle or go get a Braden Smith or somebody like of that caliber. You want to. I would rather sign somebody, a proven guy, than draft, just because they're in a window to where they can win a Super Bowl with the talent that they have, and that's the biggest priority is seeing what Taylor Decker is going to do. If he retires, then they got to go sign a guy, or they could draft. I just would rather sign him. I'd rather sign a Braden Smith,
Right.
Or you draft him, but we'll see. Second priority would be to address the safety room. Kirby Joseph is, I don't know if he's ever going to play football again because of his knee injury. He has cartilage issues in his knee. That's not good. There's a lot of question marks with him if he will even play next year. Now there have been some better signs of late. It seems like things are getting better, but how better, I don't know. And Brian Branch is coming back from a torn Achilles. He won't be back till the middle of the season. So your safety room is out, both your starters. Now, you're probably going to put Avonte Maddox in there at safety, and he was decent for him last year. He was good. I would probably use now. They have us the 17th pick, which sucks. Because I would have loved to jump into the top 5 and go get a Caleb Downs, but I would go sign like a guy like Cam Curl from the Rams, who's a free agent, a proven guy who he's made plays in the biggest moments, and he is a good safety. And I like the way he plays, and obviously he has the tie to Brad Holmes with the Rams and all that stuff.
Right.
And you're going to have to restructure some contracts. You're going to have to restructure Goff's contract. You're going to have to restructure probably Amon-Ra's contract. You're going to have to see what happens with Kirby Joseph's contract, because if he's not playing, I don't know how that affects what exactly that is. If it's a different rate or what exactly it is, you restructure that or see what happens with that. Same with and they're probably going to sign Jahmyr Gibbs this offseason, if I had to guess, because he is eligible for his extension.
You're about to have the highest paid running back in the NFL, more than likely.
Yeah, and the thing is like, I don't know. Like, I love Jahmyr Gibbs. He's one of the best offensive players in football, but do I really want to give $20 million to a running back?
Why not?
Because you can put it up elsewhere. Like, you've seen like Super Bowl winning teams don't have this, like other than the Eagles with Saquon Barkley when they signed him. Like, you looked at the Chiefs, like they had Isaiah Pacheco, who was like a 5th or 6th round pick from Rutgers, something like that. You had Tampa Bay in 21. They had Leonard Fournette, who was a signing. Last year, you had Kenneth Walker, who was a 2nd round pick, and you had Zach Charbonnet, who I think was also a 2nd round pick, if I can remember. Like, you don't have like these 1st round pick guys, and the Seahawks probably aren't going to re-sign Kenneth Walker, who just won Super Bowl MVP. So
maybe who knows? They might re-sign him. It just depends. They have cap space to do it.
Yeah,
if they really want.
And the good thing that going with the Lions, they have a ton of cap space, and they can restructure that and do what they will. If I was the general manager of the Lions, my first obviously would be Taylor Decker. My second would be signing Cam Curl, or you draft a guy. Depending, you can draft go a lot of different ways with the draft. But like defensive line has also got to be a massive priority. And you can say Max Crosby. And if I was the general manager, I would send 2 firsts and Lee McNeil in a heartbeat. You get 2 first-round picks, you get an all-pro defensive tackle. I would send them to the Raiders and bring Max Crosby home because you have Tyleek Williams, you have Roy Lopez, you can cycle in defensive tackle. It doesn't matter. If you have 2 elite edge rushers, you're going to be fine. You're going to get pressure no matter what. You just need 2 run stuffers up the middle. Tyleek Williams did a good job at that last year, and Roy Lopez did a solid job as it as well. DJ Reader's gone. He's not coming back. Same with Alex Anzalone. Alex Anzalone isn't coming back. But that's fine. Like they don't need linebacker. So I would do the Max Crosby deal, but if I don't think they will, to be completely honest. And I don't think they'll go sign like a Trey Hendrickson.
No.
I just think that would be like I think they're trying to budget everything out and they're trying to sign their guys, and that's their whole thing, which is fine. I think like a Joey Bosa would be a signing that you could do. Obviously, Bradley Chubb just got released.
And I've thrown this name out to you. I've thrown this name out to you because I think if he gets into the right system with the right guys, I think he can flourish. He hasn't been someone who he hasn't necessarily lived up to the hype. I told you, I said AJ Epinesa in your defense, I think would be a sneaky good edge rusher, personally. That's like a potential, but that's just my own little 2 cents.
Yeah, like as long as they address edge rusher and don't bring back Marcus Davenport, that's all I care about. Like,
you remember when the Saints? Sorry to cut you off again. You remember when the Saints traded up like 14 spots, and people thought they were going to draft Lamar Jackson, and then Ian Rappaport's like, hold on, it could be Marcus Davenport out of UTSA, and everyone's like, there's just no way they're drafting Lamar Jackson. It's whatever. And then they say Marcus Davenport, and everyone's like, what?
Shocked.
Completely shocked. Pretty certain he was like the 14th overall pick, if I'm not mistaken, in that draft class. Yeah, it was like
and he was 14. Like a late first, so they probably would have gotten him if they didn't trade up.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
Yeah, he turned out to be a bust. He's shown promise, but he just is. He gets injured if he moves his leg, so not much else you can do.
Yeah.
And then another thing would be to address is what's going to happen with the. I don't think it's like a massive thing, but like you got to maybe sign a corner, a depth corner, because DJ Reed did not have a great year last year. I think Terrion Arnold was fine, but he got hurt. This is like. This upcoming year for me will be the last year of Terrion Arnold. If he does not show it, I would just get rid of him. Because 3 years I think is a good sample size for a guy. And with the way they've been drafting, they obviously built through the draft and they've had good drafts. I mean the 2023 draft, they've drafted all pros. They drafted Gibbs, they drafted Jack Campbell, Sam Laporta, and Brian Branch. Those are Pro Bowl to all pro level players.
All of them.
All in a row, which is unbelievable. And the funny thing is I hated that first round by the Lions at the time, and it turned out they got 2 all pros for it. And Jack Campbell's turning to be one of the best linebackers in the league, and Gibbs is one of the best running backs in the league. But yeah, their big thing is building through the draft. And I think that with the right pieces, they don't have a lot of holes, but they need to address some things. They need to address both lines and the safety room. Corner, you don't really have to. I would sign a depth guy. Just
throw out a name.
Just
who are you thinking?
Now, Reek Woolen would be a backup.
Maybe like a Josh Jobe?
Yeah, the other guy from Seattle, although he might want to get starting money. Jalen Watson would be a guy that wants to start. I mean, they could cycle in guys too.
Right.
That's the best thing. They can cycle in a Jalen Watson or a Job or a Reek Woolen. They can do a lot of different things. Even Greg Newsome. Greg Newsome is a guy that is shown that he can play well. Greg Newsome's
going on the thumbnail. Thank you for that. Thank you.
But Nashawn Wright, from the Bears, I believe. Yeah, they don't have a lot of holes, and if they make a couple small moves, I think that they'll be right back to being a Super Bowl team. But both lines need to be addressed. I need the safety room addressed because of the uncertainty of Kirby Joseph, and you're not going to get Branch until probably I don't know about Thanksgiving, but midway through the season, you won't get him. So Avonte Maddox can fill in. I would sign Cam Curl to a couple year deal, 2 years, because Kirby Joseph, like I talked about, I don't even know if he's gonna play football again.
Right.
The whole thing has been insane. He's an all pro safety, and just it's been like nobody knows anything about what's going on. And they just gave him this contract, and I mean, if it gets voided, that frees up a ton of cap space, which would be cool. But I would rather Kirby be on the field. So we'll see. Like I said, I wouldn't mind them signing like a Wyatt Teller, like a guy like that. You can put in another guard. I know Jaquan Brisker is another guy that's thrown out there. I don't know if he'll go back to Chicago or not. A Kobe Bryant. Yeah, there's a lot of things that the Lions can do, but they don't have a lot of holes, which is good. But they do need to address both sides of the line. That has to be priority number one, and then shoring up your safety room would be another one, because they need to see what's going on with both their safeties.
For sure. And now to save the Cleveland Browns. Wow, that's a task, ain't it? It's a massive task. See, here's the problem, right? Because you have the Deshaun Watson debacle on your cap hit, regardless. It doesn't matter. And it really doesn't matter what you do from this point forward, because there still will be a lot of cap in the 2027 and 28 days anyway. It doesn't matter. So what you do is you restructure Deshaun Watson's contract again. If you restructure his contract, you save about roughly $35 million in cap space. Let me just paint the picture real quick. Cleveland right now, it depends on where you look. People have kind of really skewed their number. I've seen as little as 19 million below the cap, and I've seen up to 3 million above the cap right now for their cap situation. I'm not fully certain who is correct, because I've also seen 9 million below, I've also seen 11 million below. So I'm just kind of just throwing those numbers out there because I don't know which one is the actual accurate number at this time. Deshaun Watson, like I said, if you restructure his deal, $35 million you're going to save. If you restructure Denzel Ward's contract as well, you will save. His pay is like 32.9 on the cap right now. If you restructure it, you'll cut it in half pretty much. So you'll save 16 million. So if you combine those two, you're already saving roughly $50 million in cap space restructuring those deals. You have to cut Cornelius Lucas to tackle. Just was not a good free agent signing this offseason. You save almost $2 million cutting him with no real dead cap at all there. There's other guys you can cut, smaller guys that'll be, extra million or two off your salary cap per guy. And for Cleveland, you are also in the similar predicament where you can have financial stability a little bit. I mean, they're one of the least stable in the future because of the Deshaun Watson dead cap hit and everything. And I think it's almost a foregone conclusion Deshaun Watson's last year in Cleveland is this season.
That's
So
sad.
I think if you're Cleveland, don't even start. Don't even start. If you're Cleveland, you have to focus on re-signing the guys that are or should be back. He didn't play this year in Martin Emerson Jr., but I think you need to re-sign him to a 1-year deal. Give him one more season to go out there and play, because when he was healthy, he was one of the better cornerback twos in the NFL when he was playing. And some people were saying, oh, this is going to be the next guy. This is the Denzel Ward replacement almost. Like, that's how good Martin Emerson Jr. was playing at points. So you have to re-sign him to a 1-year deal. And no matter what you do, you cannot let, and it's simply because of my fear of Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah maybe never playing NFL football again. You have to re-sign Devin Bush. And I cannot believe I'm saying that, because Devin Bush almost has a resurgence, if you will. He was labeled as one of the biggest busts in a long time in the draft. And I mean, he was in Pittsburgh. He wasn't great in Seattle. He comes to Cleveland last 2 seasons. He's been almost all-pro level. He had an all-pro vote this season.
Mhm.
You have to keep him next to Carson Schweschinger. You can't really lose anyone on this defense. You have to re-sign Devin Bush. Some other guys you should re-sign. You should re-sign Corey Bojorquez. He's not the greatest punter, but you should re-sign him. He's still been pretty decent. You should re-sign Ronnie Hickman at safety. He obviously just got in a situation at the time of us recording. I'm pretty certain he actually got jumped in New York City like 2 days ago
Ooh.
or whatnot. But you should re-sign Ronnie Hickman. He's been a very good safety next to Grant Delpit, and he's also good depth as well on that safety room. And you should re-sign Andre Schmidt, the kicker. He, redeemed himself. I think he deserves another 2 or 3 year contract with Cleveland. Of course, after week one, it was a totally different story. And of course, he had off the field things going on that we learned later on that kind of maybe affected his week one play. But those are the guys you need to re-sign. Those guys need to stay on the roster. And then when I look at other moves, they need a tackle, man. I mean, this offensive line's completely different next year, more than likely. I mean, the only real one that might be back is probably Ethan Pocic, maybe at center. And he's even a free agent still. Cam Robinson's gone. Jack Conklin is gone, more than likely. I don't see Cleveland bringing back Conklin, even though they'd love to bring back Conklin. He just can't stay on the field.
Available.
Jedrick Wills, we don't need to discuss Jedrick Wills. I will say hurtful things, and it's no shade on you, Jedrick Wills. I'll just say hurtful things about how that offensive line played with you on it. But they need tackle, they need guard, they need center. My dream scenario is Cleveland somehow signs Tyler Linderbaum. I know it will cost a lot, and I know he's a center. But Tyler Linderbaum could be a nice cornerstone piece under Todd Monken if you go out and get him for this offensive line. And if you're Cleveland, you could. The problem is if you sign Tyler Linderbaum, you won't be able to sign Rasheed Walker from Green Bay. And I know a lot of people are tying Rasheed Walker as well to Cleveland, just like they're tying Tyler Linderbaum. Cleveland just doesn't have the money to get both, let alone arguably one.
Mm-hmm.
So those are like the dream scenarios, right? Now I'm going to kind of take it back a little bit and be a little bit more realistic here. There's one tackle in particular who I think is probably going to be a Cleveland Brown next year, and it'll be via trade. Jacksonville Jaguars tackle Walker Little is up for probably being traded this year because Cole Van Lanen kind of took over for him this season at left tackle. And I think there's still a little bit more in the tank there for Walker Little to prove that he's capable. He has ties to Cleveland Browns' new offensive line coach, George Warhop. I think Cleveland could realistically trade a 4th or 5th round pick to go get Walker Little, and you put him in there at left tackle, and you move DeJuan Jones over to the right tackle if he's healthy. And even if I'm Cleveland, you still probably try and get another right tackle because you can't trust DeJuan Jones to be healthy. But if you somehow get both Linderbaum and Walker Little, I think that's my dream scenario is to get both of those. So that way you have your left tackle and you have your center. You just kind of need to work on that interior play, and I think there's potential for Cleveland to be able to do that in the draft at both positions easily with tackle as well. Wide receiver is intriguing because I think if you're Cleveland, you probably want a wide receiver at number 6 overall or number 24. But they still need depth. I mean, Jerry Jeudy and Cedric Tillman, like you need more. You just need more on that roster. Cleveland could sign 2 free agents and still draft a wide receiver at 6 even. Just some guys to list. I mentioned Christian Kirk last week as a potential tag guy just because Houston's wide receiver situation. But if Kirk, more than likely, I don't think gets tagged. If he ends up hitting free agency market, I think Kirk could make some sense. I think Brandon Ayuk could make some sense. I don't know if I want, Brandon Ayuk necessarily with his off-the-field shenanigans and if he's really taken his health serious out there in San Francisco. But it would make sense offensively. He would be the type of receiver that Todd Monken would look for. And just some other free agents as well. I'm thinking of Jalen Reagor could be a nice depth piece. Paris Campbell could be a nice piece. Tim Patrick could also be a nice piece. But I think Cleveland's probably got Carnell Tate or Mekhi Lemon circled, I think, personally. Even Jordan Tyson, even though I'm bigger on Jordan Tyson than both of those guys, who knows with his medical stuff for the draft. Maybe even Denzel Boston if they have to take a guy at 24 or Omar Cooper Jr. Um, but I think wide receiver is going to be more draft focused. And I do expect probably one of the guys I mentioned to possibly be in Cleveland next year as well. And knowing Cleveland and how they are offensively, they would probably want a second tight end, even with Todd Monken's offense. And the tight end you would want is more of a blocker first who can go out and catch the ball. I mean, you have Harold Fannin Jr. He's going to be a cornerstone of your future. That dude is like that. People forget, you know. People talk about Tyler Warren and everything, but Harold Fannin Jr. was just as good as him this year at tight end. They both, I'm pretty certain, I forgot the stat. I think they both had the most receptions, like, period, for tight ends, let alone in a rookie season. It was kind of insane.
A good year for tight ends. You had Colston Loveland, too.
Very good year for tight ends across the board. Colston Loveland took way too long, I think, to really get going. He was like the reverse Emeka Egbuka, where Emeka Egbuka was hot out the start and then kind of tapered off, where he was almost non-existent because of Cole Kmet.
Yep.
And then he took massive strides throughout the season. So if I'm Cleveland, I try and get a blocking tight end. I'm kind of throwing out the name Cade Otton from Tampa Bay as a potential guy. Could he stay in Tampa? That's also very possible. He could stay in Tampa, or maybe Tampa goes out and gets another tight end. This tight end class in free agency, pretty deep. It's pretty deep, to be honest. So I could see Cleveland getting another tight end to pair with Harold Fannin Jr. And I'm throwing out another situation. Quarterback. Dun dun dun. Here we go. If you do get another quarterback on roster, I know people are talking about Malik Willis to Cleveland. There's been reports out there. I'm not buying Malik Willis to Cleveland at all, by the way. I think it's all pretty much smoke because I think it's almost a fill-in for the Miami Dolphins. That's what I think. But if you're Cleveland and you really want a quarterback and you want to add another piece, this is all hypothetical. Okay? I'm not saying do this or anything. You don't draft a guy this year, and if you do get a guy, it's by trade. And look at Todd Monken and the kind of quarterback he works with. There is a guy that kind of stands out who would fit his kind of quarterback profile, who is on the trade market right now. I don't like saying this, but I'm going to say it. You trade for Anthony Richardson if you want to add another quarterback.
Wow. I thought you were going to say Kyler Murray, to be honest with you.
I'm not going Kyler Murray, and here's why I'm saying no to Kyler Murray.
Because he sucks, and he's small. That's why.
He's small. He's small. If you go with Anthony Richardson, you trade like a 4th round pick. 5th round, if you can really try and finesse Indianapolis. He's still young. Obviously, it hasn't panned out in Indianapolis. A fresh start somewhere else in a nice quarterback competition between Shedeur Sanders and Anthony Richardson. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of it. I just think if they were to make a move at quarterback, I think that would be a realistic one. Is you trade for Anthony Richardson. I think the Kyler Murray, they could. I mean, I don't know. I think he screams a New York Jet, but that's just my own opinion as well. I don't think Cleveland's a very realistic option for Kyler Murray either. And so I think Anthony Richardson would be more in the wheelhouse if they want to add quarterback. I still think Shedeur Sanders should be the guy next year. But if you're to add someone, I think Anthony Richardson is going to be on their list, if you will.
Why not?
Why not? I mean, he's a pretty good rapper. He's a pretty good rapper. He, gives up on teammates and whatnot because he's tired.
What can happen with some coaching and it
could change. It could change with a new coaching staff. You never know. Anthony Richardson
Baker changed after he left Cleveland. So
exactly, Anthony Richardson could hoist a Super Bowl trophy for the Cleveland Browns somehow at some point. You never know. You never know. You just might see the Brook Park Browns play the Hammond Bears for a Super Bowl trophy
gonna
in the
happen.
next few years. We will
Not the
have to
Bears.
see. We didn't
What's
even talk about that today. That was breaking news this day at the time of recording. We'll wrap it up with this. The Chicago Bears' new stadium will be in Indiana. They had the talks for a long time in Arlington Heights, Illinois, to have their land there. And they had a lot of different disputes with the state of Illinois, city of Chicago, about them leaving. Indiana got in the circle. Even Iowa, the
Yep.
Quad Cities got involved in this. And now they're going to be officially going to Hammond, Indiana.
Why not, man? Just put the Lions in Toledo at this point.
I know how people feel. Some people will feel like, oh, you know, this is an absolute mockery. It's an absolute disgrace. But from what I've heard about the whole situation, it sounded like the Bears were willing to work with the state of Illinois and with the city of Chicago to try and keep them there. So I say don't feel upset at the Bears for moving to Indiana. And honestly, it's not like they're moving that far. They're literally going to be directly over the border.
They're still in like the Chicago area.
Yes. Wolf Lake.
The Chicago extends to Indiana.
Wolf
so.
Lake, where they're going to be at is, like you said earlier before recording, half of it is in Illinois.
Yeah.
So, and there's a lot more land there. They could probably build up a whole, you know, almost city just for that. You know, how Cleveland's kind of doing the same thing where they're going to have hotels and a bunch of other different, you know, restaurants and everything around the stadium where they're building it up in Brook Park. They could probably do it way better at this plot of land that they're going to have at Wolf Lake in Indiana. So that's just a little bit of news coming in from the Chicago Bears. Going to be the Indiana Bears. Hammond Bears. Which one sounds better, Hammond or Indiana Bears?
The Indiana Bears. It's more fun.
We already have the Indianapolis Colts. That's already got most of Indiana in it. Just forget the police part.
It's more funny to say the Indiana Bears.
The Indiana Bears. That's going to wrap up episode 23 here of the Scoop and Score Football Show, brought to you by Ball N Beatz Media. Thank you guys for tuning in. If you're still here at the end and you haven't subscribed yet,
please do.
Do it. What did Shia LaBeouf say? Just do it. You should do it.
Dreams come true.
You should hit the push notification bell as well to stay up to date on all new videos, new episodes every single week coming out to you guys. And like I said as well, follow us on our TikTok page, our X, and our Instagram, all at Ball N Beatz Media. And even go follow us on our own personal channels as well. Links are in the description down below. We will see you guys next week. Take care and peace out.